Hi everyone, and thanks for subscribing to my channel. The European Union are at it again. Yesterday, Ursula von der Leyen announced a new plan to rearm Europe. The plan is to spend up to €800 billion over the next number of years to move towards a wartime economy. Now, anybody who's been watching what's going on has seen this coming for a significant period of time as a drive towards the wartime economy to save the skin of the European leaders and their globalist masters. We've seen that happen, for instance, during the times of COVID, where we saw the biggest transfer of wealth towards the billionaires in society, and of course the magic money tree and the quantitative easing policies of the European Central Bank that has actually caused carnage in so many people's lives around Europe, and in particular here in Ireland. And also what's interesting with this has been the push through the explosion of the Nord Stream, with the higher energy costs that's coming in through the circumvented oil and gas, and not to mention at higher prices, and the LNG that's coming across the Atlantic from the United States at far higher cost. Now, of course, this has always been the agenda of the war in Ukraine, to move towards serving their globalist masters and profiting the military-industrial complex, the Raytheons, the Lockheed Martins, the BAE Systems, and all those other companies such as Rheinmetall in Germany, where it's going to be pushed towards supplying more money for the arms dealers, for the weapons dealers. Yesterday, an announcement was made about a new contract from the British government. Over €2 billion worth of arms, up to 5,000 air defence systems are going to be created and made up in the Thales factory up in East Belfast. Again, which is just absolute lunacy. And people up the north of Ireland are struggling in poverty, many people on hospital waiting lists, a lot of serious social problems in the north of Ireland, much the same as we have in the Republic of Ireland as well, where you see a lot of issues happening because of the neoliberal policies of the European Union. And we've seen this push over the past number of years by people like von der Leyen, who was referred to as being part of a powerful consigliere, mafia-like, by the departing ombudsman a number of months ago, Emily O'Reilly, who said that it was nearly impossible to get information from the European Commission. But we know how undemocratic the European Union has become, because fundamentally the power and our sovereignty has been handed over to Brussels at the behest of the European and Eurofoil and the European leaders essentially, and really branch managers here in Ireland, fundamentally what they've become. Because really fundamentally all the local government in Ireland, and fundamentally Dáil Éireann to a massive extent, has become not little more than a talking shop, where most legislation comes from the European Union, comes from the European Commission. And where does the European Commission get their legislation from? The big, powerful corporate lobbyists. So it works for the interests of the big corporations against the people. And this is what's happening again. We saw that through austerity in Ireland, where we saw the bank bailout, where we saw Ireland settle up to nearly 40 to 50% of the total European banking debt was foisted on the shoulders of ordinary people here in Ireland through the bailout of the IMF, the European Central Bank and the European Union. And while many members of those organisations spent their time in the five-star Merrion Hotel just off Merrion Street, more and more people suffered and died because of their policies, because of the austerity cutbacks on public services. And this is what's going to happen again with the plan from the European Union around this as well. Previously they tried to cut public services and talk about competitiveness, but this is going to be part of ripping up the fiscal rule books to support and to prop up their rich friends in the military-industrial complex. They never ripped up the rule books, fiscal rule books, for basic disasters we faced here in Ireland, such as homelessness, such as housing, the health service, and many more issues when it comes to public and social services. They really come last in the list when it's all about serving the interests of the big corporations. And this is really endgame for the European Union, because people have had enough of what's going on, and people need to stand up to what is really going on in Irish society and across Europe against the warmongering. It needs mass mobilisations and people on the streets to say no to this, and in particular here in Ireland, what they're doing in terms of the erosion of Irish neutrality and the erosion and taking away of the triple lock, for instance, which is fundamentally important, because really you cannot trust the political leaders in Ireland to stand up for the interests of the people in Ireland. And it's interesting because Micheál Martin is more interested in sending money away to control a foreign country's borders, such as Ukraine, into a money laundering machine rather than controlling the borders here in Ireland and rather than looking after the defence of the Irish state. But of course, Micheál Martin again and Simon Harris and the Lowry-led independents, all that crowd of complete shysters, are pushing the same agenda time and time again and bowing down to the European masters rather than serving the interests of the people here in Ireland. But what's revealing with this, as I said, is about the ripping up of the fiscal rule book, because they estimate that up to about 650 billion euro is going to be pulled through an increase in the GDP spending of defence spending in relation to GDP. They estimate up to 1.5% per country would yield another 650 billion euro over the next 4 years. So where's it going to come from? Public services, more cash being pushed upwards to the very rich in society, widening inequalities, and ordinary people will suffer and die, which is the same as what's happened here in Dublin, where you've seen 40 people die in the streets last year. This is going to become a common occurrence across our country because of these policies. And also what they're doing is they're looking for new loans to a member state, 150 billion euro loans to member states across Europe again. And of course, they're going to look at the European Union budget and perhaps look at new ways to funnel more money upwards towards the military-industrial complex at our expense. And also look at the other funds, such as the European Investment Bank, and look for private investment in this nonsense that they're pushing forward. So all the language that's been coming from people like van der Leyen in particular over the last number of days has been talking about grave threats, devastating, dangerous, security, rearmament. This is going to be the usual mantra we're going to hear in this push in terms of what's happening across the continent of Europe. They always have to find a threat. They always have to find an enemy to get the people in a state of panic and fear and to think of an enemy rather than look for diplomacy and peace. Ireland, as a neutral country, should know most of all. We have already got completely shafted by the European Union through the bank bailout. Are people going to stand up now and take the same nonsense from the Irish political leaders who are more interested in standing up with the warmongers than standing up for Irish neutrality, Irish sovereignty and Irish independence? And as I said, no money to control our borders, but plenty of money to control somebody else's borders. This is the same nonsense that spun in many generations. Well over 100 years ago, John Redmond spun the same nonsense about defending democracy on a foreign battlefield so people could die in France on many battlefields, and essentially ordinary, which split the Irish volunteers here, the people who were standing up for Irish independence and Irish sovereignty and Irish democracy. More than ever, it's so relevant now that we need to stand up for the same. Stand up for Irish independence, stand up for neutrality, whatever side of the fence you're on. And if you're interested in standing up for peace and Pacific settlements and international disputes, that's what we should be standing up as proud Irish people and many other generations before us who stood up for the same principles. So thanks for the support, and please share my videos as well, and please press subscribe if you can. So from Dublin, Slán, take care.